Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to dye a double-stranded sock blank in a colorway inspired by a very special Pokemon. But before I can share the Pokemon and therefore our color inspiration for today, I need to give a very special shout out, thank you, and happy birthday to today's lab partner, Harvey Thompson. Harvey, happy 10th birthday! I am so excited to play around more with some Pokemon color inspiration to dye the sock blank for you today. And I have a little surprise of something I'm gonna try to do on this blank, which may have already been spoiled in the thumbnail, but it's an idea. I'm gonna try. We'll see if it happens. If you at home would like to know how you can become a lab partner like Harvey, go and check out the listings in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. I can't guarantee any particular date, but with enough notice, I can try to schedule your lab partner video around a birthday, anniversary, or some other special date. Just message me in advance to make sure that I'm able to accommodate that. So our Pokemon today is Mega Charizard X. Now, Charizard is one of the most famous Pokemon out there. Probably second to Pikachu. I think it's well known. And not in the original game where it came out. In a later game, they introduced something called Mega Evolution, which is sort of like a temporary boost that a Pokemon can get during a battle or for a short period of time. And Charizard can evolve two different ways, Mega Charizard X and then Mega Charizard Y. The details about why you might pick one over the other isn't very important, but I just wanted to clarify what this mega thing was in case you didn't know. But the thing with this Pokemon is this palette is very sophisticated. We've got a lot of different blues, some grays, and blacks to draw on. It is a fiery Pokemon, but the fire is very icy, in appearance at least, and so I'm excited to play with it. The Stroll double-stranded sock blanks have 2 strands of 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon yarn knit together into this piece of fabric. So whatever we dye onto the blank itself, once it's unraveled and turned into socks or mittens or something else, you'll get a matched pair of socks. So we can be as random and creative as we want on the blank itself. I haven't decided exactly how we're gonna dye this blank yet, but I'm gonna go and pull some colors from our Mega Charizard X. If you want to learn more about any of the tools or materials, including these blanks that I use in my videos, I do have a lot of links in the video description, and these include affiliate links, so I might earn a commission if you make any purchases after clicking on the links. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-soak this sock blank in some plain tap water with no additional acid. And I think I might have just a regular skein of Stroll, also pre-soaking to have on hand as a yarn mop in case I need it for my technique. And the surprise is that I'm gonna attempt a stencil made out of cardstock. Now, I know that this is not practical. Because, well, cardstock when it gets wet will probably rip. But I think if I try to do the stencil using dry dye powder mixed with citric acid, it might work reasonably well because I'm not going to be patting on the stencil with a wet brush. Now, if I had had a little bit more forethought, maybe I would have bought some transparencies that I could use as a stencil. But we're gonna try this out. And oh, you can see a wing there. Continuity note, I got a haircut. Now, the way this all came to be and I started to attempt a stencil is that when I was Googling images of Mega Charizard X to use in this video, I came across a stencil in a 3D printing sort of collection of patterns, Thingiverse. When we tried to download the 3D printing file, we weren't able to easily set it up with our printer. And so I decided that I have these images, I can really easily turn them into a cut file, so I may as well attempt to do this with the Cricut, and we'll see if this works. And honestly, I have yet to go literal with any of my Pokemon dyeing projects. And I can think of no better project to go a little bit literal with the Pokemon inspiration than in a birthday lab partner episode for a 10-year-old. So Harvey, I don't know if this will work or if we'll end up turning it into like a massive flame on the blank, but we're gonna give it a shot. And here you can see sort of the negative space from one of those stencils that I made, which I think I made this a little bit larger than I intended, but I think it'll be good. It'll be great. But one issue with stencils like this, where one color is supposed to be blue, the other one is black, they don't overlap in any kind of way for me to line them up. So I'm also gonna print a stencil that has all of the pieces as the negative space. I'll show in a sec. This way I can line things up so that way we can see more of the entire Pokemon. And so you'll notice here that there's a lot of really, really thin lines, but there's fewer thin lines on each of the individual stencils because of the way, you know, this wing is a different color, the chest is a different color from some of the things next to it. And so that is going to, I think, help this work on a sock blank. Because if it was just this, and we were doing all one color, I don't think that these lines would stay very well. I think that maybe the reverse would work, but it's hard to get a stencil like this where you could just get, see those lines versus those lines in the actual negative space. But anyway, I'm excited to try and that I can show what the whole stencil looks like. Oh, I also want to add that this artwork is not my original design. This is something I found on Google as clip art and then used. I've pulled a number of Dharma acid dyes. And what I'm thinking to start with is that we're going to use the Frozen and Tornado Gray as sort of a immersion base for the blank. And we'll pour these colors on to create a base layer. And then we'll bring it to the countertop and do some citric acid speckles, both using the stencils that I created and attempting that, but then also maybe using the speckles to create some other designs, abstract designs around some of the edges. And I want the tiniest amount of the Cayenne red. This is the color in the eyes. And I thought that that would bring in a fun little pop of color. So that's what I'm thinking. And now I'm gonna go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves. And we're gonna dissolve some of our dyes. I debated doing this 100% by feel and just measuring out some of the dyes. And I'm still kind of doing that, but I drew on my scale so that way I don't measure out way too much color, because I know that I'm only dyeing 100 grams of the sock blank. Although, do I want to do a backup? No, we're just going to do 100 grams. In the end, I ended up with approximately 0.7 grams of Frozen Blue, 0.2 grams Tornado, and then about half a gram of Platinum, and then dissolved it in some hot tap water. Here is my 4-inch deep catering steam pan, and I've got our sock blank, and I'm going to bring this over. Now, one reason why I did debate and consider having a second one was so I could scrunch this up a little bit more, but there's no reason why I can't have the blank nice and scrunched. Now, some more color might leak down over the edges, but that is totally okay. In this cup, I have about 2 cups of water. And I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. And then to this, I'm gonna add a bit of our Frozen Blue dye. Just a bit. And now I'm gonna take this and pour it over. And yep, I think I mixed up way too much dye. Way too much dye. I want to bring some more colors into this blank, but that has a bit of saturation already. I'm now going to turn on the 2 burners because we have enough water in here that it should heat up pretty quickly. But you can see that the coverage here is not even. And that is what we want. So I'm gonna give this a minute or two until it really seems like it's starting to heat up, and then we'll bring over some of the grays. I just reduced the heat. That took very little time. All right, I've got a little bit of water, a little bit of the Tornado Gray. That's just a touch. Oh, I can do more. Just pouring it on and seeing what happens. Now, something cool may happen around the edges. Because we have that water there, we may end up getting more color around those outside edges, which would be kind of fun. And I wouldn't mind. So I'm just sort of pouring this on, leaving some more space in the middle because that's where we're going to try to put our design. That's where we're going to bring that in. And now I'm going to bring in some more water with another 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. We may not bring in the platinum, but we have these colors that we can use later on if we need to. But because I'm curious, it's possible that we might start to have too much liquid for this idea to work, to have this color kind of just get at those edges. So instead of adding that water with acid, what I should probably do is add a spoonful of the dye in here and stir it up. And I'm trying to add it to the water before it touches the edge, just so that way it can spread. And so I don't know if this is going to work the way I'm hoping that it will, where it'll bring some more of this gray to the side and give us sort of this blue in the center. It might just spread all over though. Okay, I'm gonna let this heat and we will see, but we definitely have space to play with things that are more saturated, I think. But I am excited. Why not? There's no harm in adding more acid in there as well. Okay. I think I'll come back in about 10 minutes and we'll see what's happening. It's been 10 minutes and I think this did what I wanted. It looks like we have some darkness around the edge and some lighter colors towards that center. We'll be looking at the whole thing in a little bit. I can add more color, but I like starting with a base color versus white, even though we do still have some white left in here. I'm setting aside the blank, and this is still on, so that way we can let it cool. And I'm going to bring over that dye and water and vinegar, and also bring over our yarn mop, because I used it to clean up the, what's it? Oh my gosh, what's that thing called? The scale. I used this to clean up the scale, and there wasn't any acid in the yarn yet. And so let's do some fun stuff here. And add a bit more water, because we can start with a base color on a yarn mop too. We aren't limited to doing that just with our blank. Bring over this platinum that I didn't use. And as I add the dye, you can see that I am sort of moving the yarn, moving it through the yarn. We will be adding a fair amount of color onto this yarn overall, but it also might be possible we don't have that much color to add. So we're starting with the base. We might be coming back here later on. And I took about this much of our frozen blue, and I'm going to add some water. The reason why I'm diluting the dye is so that way I could spread it out more onto our yarn. If I had just poured the more concentrated dye on here, what would have happened would have been that we would have had like a small patch of a dark color versus larger patches of light color. And this skein that we have right here is completely beautiful and glorious. I really, really like it. So I'm gonna just let this sit in here for, oh, I don't know, 5-10 minutes until the color has absorbed. We will be heat setting it later on because this is our mop from today. But if not for a couple of dark tornado spots on here that existed already, I would probably call it and leave this as it was. But I'll remove it off camera and then we'll have it on hand for any yarn mop business we need to do later on. The citric acid I have on hand today is a little bit coarser. It's a little bit more like sanding sugar sprinkles than some of the more salt-like powders that I've had in the past. But I'm going to use this and divide some of it into 3 different cups so we can mix up some True Black, Alpine Blue, and Cayenne Red speckles. And we'll bring in some of the other colors that I've pulled if we need them. I've also gone ahead and protected my work surface with some plastic wrap so that way we're ready to go and dye our sock blank. Okay, I need the least amount of our Cayenne Red. Though I'm realizing I'm doing this on the, just use one little scoop, on the plastic wrap, but that's okay. If we get some color going through, it is what it is. So I added about a scoop of powder. Now on one hand, this is a lot of dye powder. On the other hand, I do want to be able to spread this one out. And where I'm spreading these other colors, I'm going to want the dye to get pretty concentrated in those areas. So, I don't know. Doing 4 scoops of black. But we can edit this really easily. If we need more dye, I mean, I would get another scoop. I mean, I think I'm going to want more dye. So I wouldn't use the scoop that has been in the citric acid back in our container. Okay, our Alpine Blue, I'm using fairly heaping scoops. That's like a double scoop. So I've used a lot more of the Alpine Blue dye than I have the True Black thus far. There we go. You can kind of see that we have a little bit more visible color here. That's good. Okay, I think I'm going to double it. But what I will say also, I am noticing dye powder down on the bottom here. So it's likely that I have some powder that is not coating the citric acid, or else we might have some more fine milled citric acid on the bottom. Okay, let's do 4. That's a huge one. Heaping. You know, if these spoons were a little bit smaller, then I would be able to put them and keep them in the jars. But stirring this up, that's looking a lot better. All right, I'd say we're ready to set up our blank. And I've just noticed that my respirator mask is making a weird popping sound. Maybe it's the humidity or something, because I'm hearing like one of the valves just make more noise than I'm used to when I open it. And oh, this is awesome. So the blank is still slightly warm, which isn't a bad thing. See how towards the edge we've got more of that color? That is great. And I think we're going to attempt to put our Charizard just sort of here in the middle. Oh goodness, you can't see so well. Okay, but here is our blank right now. Okay, and I'm going to do this facing me because that makes sense. And I'm going to put down this paper
that has everything all together. I was hoping that maybe it would stick if it got a little bit wet, but it's not really doing that. We may end up with a little bit of a blob. This way I can place down our blue area and line it up. And I do kind of want to weight it down. I'll at least weight down one side. And I'll try to just hold the other with my hands. Okay, well I have my yarn mop off to the side as needed. I have a little brush to help move the powder to where we want it. And we're gonna start, I'm gonna just kind of scoop this powder on, at least when it comes to these smaller areas. See, I can take this brush. This is probably way too much dye in this little area, but the brush will help. Yeah, I don't know how this is going to go. I should have made the stencil a little bit smaller. I have a feeling I am going to be, oh dear. I have a feeling I'm going to be very focused during this. Using the scoop is actually probably a little better than using my hands. And then the brush is really just helping push this color in where we want it. All right, I am going to put this to music because I can tell that I am not going to be talking very much, and I'm just going to be focused really hard on this. So I'll see you guys in a little bit.
With something like this, all of a sudden if I find I'm not talking, you know I'm focusing really, really hard. I found that sort of pouring and dumping the citric acid speckles onto the paper and then brushing them onto the frame helped me both get what hopefully will be a defined outline, but helped me direct things into the right place. Maybe having a salt shaker or something like I did when I did the DNA stencil would have been a good idea, because that maybe would have made it easier for me to distribute the color throughout. Now, looking at the color of the blue, it is seeming super dark, and I am debating whether or not I made an error by picking Alpine blue versus like sapphire or something that is a brighter blue. I wonder if this blue is going to feel too dark or if it will feel blue. But we won't know until we add the black. Now, I haven't really used my yarn mop at all, and I think when I go to remove part of the stencil, I will probably take it directly to the garbage versus trying to use the mop here, because I do like the mop, and so I think we'll just let that be who she is and focus on trying to make this blank awesome. Some of the difficulty that I'm having is 100% because that this stencil is made out of paper versus some kind of plastic or something that can lay flat a little better. And so as it gets wet, it's warping a little bit. But I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic here.
Okay, this was really exciting. I have no idea how well it worked. I am gonna let this sit for 5 minutes before we try to swap out the stencil. The only hint I have is I can see some of the lines in there. Oh man, I have no idea how this is going. Okay, I'm gonna move the cup I used as a weight, and we're gonna remove this top layer. Actually, that looks pretty good. Okay. There might be a couple of areas that are a little bit messed up or where the dye is way too heavy. I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet. But having this other stencil here and seeing those blue areas is super fun. Okay, now I'm going to try to line up our stencil for our black. Oh dear. As best I can. It's going to be hard with some of those tiny little areas. And, well, let's speed things up again. Oh, I do want to dry off my little brush.
When I started adding the black, the brush that was slightly damp that I had used with the blue, nope, not working, gotta move on, gotta do something else, because it was just dissolving the dye. I mean, that did give some really cool brush strokes onto the stencil itself, but I don't think that that was doing what I needed it to do on the yarn. My fingers are crossed that with this much pigment, the citric acid in there is going to help these colors strike quickly, but they may spread out. We may end up with something that feels like a shadow versus any kind of sharp lines. I don't know. But it did seem to work, and the color at least is looking way more black than our Alpine blue.
Okay. It's the moment of a little bit of truth. Wow! Oh my gosh, it looks so cool! Oh my goodness. Now, we still absolutely have a stencil on here, and the white is giving it so much contrast and sharpness, so we don't know what's happening beneath the surface. I'm gonna cross my fingers, and I'm gonna set a timer for 10 minutes before we do anything else on the blank. There is so much undissolved powder around here. I'm gonna go on the blue first, and I'm literally just trying to poke the powder that I see into the yarn. Hopefully it'll get some moisture and will dissolve some of that citric acid. I will say I'm seeing less. Okay, and then the black. Ooh, there's a lot. Oh, this seems to be helping. At least it's pushing it in. I'm just so afraid it's going to all spread out once we go to, like, wrap this up. I'm trying. Okay, I think I gotta kind of call it there. All right, it's the moment of truth. Okay. You know what? It's awesome. It's awesome. Like, the wing is super, super sharp. You even have some of the other, like, elements there. It is not super stark and in your face, but I think you'll know what it is. It's just not quite as cool as it was a moment ago. Okay. I love it though, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. The laughter is just mainly because, like, since the head has like a flame by it, like, it just looks like the head is super big here. Because things did spread, but we do have some really nice sharp lines through here, and that's kind of fun. Okay. I am adding very few and very spread out cayenne speckles, and I'm even doing a couple around our dragon, because Mega Charizard X is dragon and fire type. And what's funny is right now, because some of the citric acid is so big, you can't see any of that red, but it's starting to come in, and it's super subtle. But we like subtle. It's just some tiny little pops of color. It's just going to take some time for it to sink in. Oh man, okay. I do want to add, let's start with the blue. I'm going to add also, not really in any kind of design, but I'm adding some Alpine blue speckles around, and then we'll do some black speckles too. Not in any particular order. I love the sharpness of that wing. Oh my gosh. Now this black is pretty potent. So I am attempting to be careful. Now when this blank is unraveled, it's going to be mottled with lots of different colors. And my reason for adding these speckles is just for a little bit of some pop once that goes down. But I'm thinking we're pretty good. But again, we're going to need to let this sit. So much sitting and waiting here today. We're going to sit so that way I can let some of this dye sink in, letting more of our dragon sink in. Oh my goodness. Overall, I'm pretty impressed. I learned a lot.
But let's wait for 15 minutes.
I'm going to attempt to place some cling wrap over our Charizard before we even wrap things up. This way, as we wrap, I don't know, it'll just give a little more protection. Because down at the edge, it's okay if we go loose and big. Now I'm being super gentle here, trying to not spread those colors. And I'm immediately going into the steamer basket to steam set for, let's say, 40 minutes. And we'll cross our fingers.
It has been 40 or 45 minutes, I don't remember. I'm gonna leave the blank in here in the steamer basket. I turned the heat off and I'm gonna leave it in here to cool. But while I have you here, just a reminder that steam is very, very hot, and take care and precautions, and don't leave any parts of your body in direct contact with the steam for prolonged periods of time. I'm fine, by the way. It's just worth saying, be careful. The blank is still a little bit warm, but I really, really want to know how this worked. Okay, go on. We haven't gotten to the stencil part. I see blobs, but I do see a wing. I think we lost a lot of definition, but that's okay. That's okay. The color is quite intense. Let's see here. What on earth happened there? Oh no! Something happened to the face. Okay, that wing though looks great. So the blue did great. The black, when we moved it, the black just spread a ton. You know, it's gonna look like a little bit of a flame. Hey, you know what? Like, the front half, not so great. The back half, excellent. This flame, the blue worked great. I think that I should try to make a proper stencil and use guar gum. I think that that's what I should do. What on earth happened over here? I'll have to look at the original picture. I mean, I'll pop up the picture of what I was going for over there. Oh my gosh. I don't know if that was just color that spread or what. But you know what? This is fun, and the nice thing is that it will be unraveled anyway and turn into something else. Harvey, I hope you appreciate that I tried. I will say this color is way more intense than it looked like originally, but man, I have to go look now. I'm gonna fill this up with water And we're gonna add some dish soap. There was a tiny bit of bleeding, but ultimately not bad. Or you know, good, I'm not seeing any more bleeding. Maybe that's not explosion out of the nose. Though, you know what? It's not. Okay, because this is the flame coming out of the face and that's the nose. See, it almost looked like that this was like the mouth and then that was something out. But you know what? We did okay. We did okay. All right, that's better than I thought. Oh, I do see some tiny pops of red, which makes me happy. But anyway, I'm gonna rinse out the silk, put the yarn into my spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and I'll wash the yarn mop. That's really the bonus colorway off camera, and we'll take a closer look at the finished dry yarn. This blank turned out so cool. Before we even get to the stenciled piece, let's just look at how we've got these more grays that are sort of radiating around because of how I placed it when we were dyeing just the blank. And we got some of those deeper colors below and above, and it almost is like, oh, what's it called when you make the edges of a photo dark? I'm like totally blanking, but it looks really cool and really draws your attention to our Mega Charizard X. When I initially saw it in washing, I thought that this was all a big smudge because I was thinking that that was the mouth. But actually, it didn't really smudge that much because this is the eye, the mouth is here, and that's a flame coming out of the mouth. This worked so much better than I could have anticipated. I think that there are a few things I would do differently in the future. And one would be using a little bit less of the blue so there's a little more contrast. You can see how dark it gets in some of this area, and that's because I really packed that dye in. But I am just so amazed that things didn't spread even more. We have a tiny bit of definition around the claws. I think if I had a more proper stencil, this could work so well. So yeah, I don't really recommend making stencils out of paper, but I'm really happy with how this one turned out. And our yarn mop, or really just a bonus skein of yarn we dyed, is also glorious and beautiful. If we take a closer look at the background areas, you could see from far away the blues and the grays, but here are some of those itty bitty Alpine blue speckles and the chunkier black speckles with these hints of the red. The red is so subtle that from far away you don't really notice it, but I love the contrast that it gives the yarn, and so as this is worked into a finished garment, I think that that'll just be really cool. Harvey, Thompson, thank you so much for being my lab partner for today's episode of Dyepot Weekly, and I hope that you have a really happy birthday. I had so much fun creating this colorway, both inspired and very literally depicting Mega Charizard X, and I just hope that you're gonna love it. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if any of you want to learn how to be lab partners like Harvey, go and check out the listings in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. And if the listings are currently sold out, feel free to send me a message if you'd like to be on the waiting list for when more lab partner listings open up. Lab partners get to pick the yarn base that I dye, and then I'll design a video taking into account your color preferences. And if you have a birthday or something coming up and you would like the video to come out around then, I'm happy to try to get it as close as my schedule can accommodate. But again, if you have special requests, please go ahead and message me before you check out, because then, yeah, everyone will be on the same page. Thank you so much for watching.